Well, good evening, everyone. It is 6:45 on our official clock here. So we are going to start this month's meeting. Welcome to the February 2024 edition of the Minnesota Woodworkers Guild monthly meetings. We're glad to have you all, especially if it's your very first time. We welcome you. My name is Ed Noy. I'm president of the Guild. And myself, along with 11 other dedicated individuals who are members of our board of directors, create these programs for you and all the various events that the guild puts on during the year. A few of those directors are online here with us. Angela Vargas, she takes care of all of our membership matters. Matt LeBeau, he's the guy responsible for our program committee, the group that puts together this monthly meeting and all the other 9. We have 10 of these monthly meetings every year. Ron Austin is with us, and hopefully I'll get Ron to talk here in a few minutes about the Woodworkers Expo. And then Paul Ehrlich is also on our board of directors, and Paul's responsible for the fall seminar, and we'll have Paul give a little bit of update on what's cooking here for this year. As always, I want to remind you that the Guild is supported by a lot of corporate and private small business owners who give our members great discounts on their products and support us in many other ways. One of those supporters is Feral Equipment, an outfit that you may not be very familiar with. They're fairly recent to the woodworking equipment business, but they've been in the construction equipment business for many years. We just sent out an email blast today telling everybody about this super big event they're going to have on March 7th at 7 and 8 at their main facility, which is in Eau Claire. Take a look at that, check out the links in that email, and head on over there on the 7th and 8th. You can get a free lunch and see lots of good equipment, talk to lots of company sponsors. Let's see. So let's go on. And Ron Austin, could you talk to us about the upcoming Woodworkers Expo?
Yes. The Expo committee is proud to say that the 2024 Expo will be at the Minnesota State Fairgrounds on October 12th, 2024. There will be free parking. We plan to have a tool swap outside the building. We plan to have makers and tool vendors and lumber yards and other things woodworking related. We're in a building that is slightly larger than Canterbury Park, so this is just looking really good right now. So we hope you put this on your calendar. Again, it's October 12th at the Minnesota State Fairgrounds, and the committee is going to begin taking registrations for vendor participation. So if you have good ideas for who should be at that event to advertise their business or their skill, please let someone on the committee know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. And you can contact those kind of people. If you go to our website, go to the contacts page, you can see all the key members. Those are members of the board of directors and members of our key committees. And you can contact them via email by clicking on the link there on their contact page. The next event we want to talk about is our fall seminar. Paul, you're on.
Thanks, Ed. We're just in the process of setting up the fall seminar right now. We've identified a potential presenter.
Hear you.
Sorry?
Go ahead,
We've
Paul.
identified a potential presenter, and we're just finalizing details with him. The project that he's going to bring us is an end table or a coffee table. It'll be a project that features mixed mixed materials and veneer. And the tentative date for that will be the first weekend in November, which would be the November 1st through 3rd. We'll have details posted later spring or early summer. So we're looking forward to another great year.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Paul. Housekeeping note that I failed to mention at the beginning here. Everyone is, please make sure your microphones are on mute. If you have a question that comes up in your mind during the presentation, please use the notes feature of Zoom. We'll be monitoring this and we'll break in an appropriate time and relate your questions or concerns to our presenters. All right, the last event that we want to talk about is our annual Northern Woods exhibition. I think we're on number 38 this year. We've been doing this a long time. Mike Johnson is our board member who's responsible for that this year. Mike isn't with us this evening, so I thought I'd give you a little bit of a recap. It will be once again at the Eden Prairie Center. It will be Thursday, April 25 through Sunday, April 28. Registration has been open to enter your pieces for a little while. Things are going slow like they usually do. So far, we have 7 pieces that have been registered. But you want to start thinking about this because you get a cut rate on registering for this up until March 27th. Entry fee for each piece, each first piece is $70, and an additional piece would be $50. And on March 28th through April 17, which is the close of registrations, the registration fee goes up to $100. So make sure you're getting yourself really busy out there in the shop, get some pieces together. We hope to have another outstanding show this year like we have for the last 37 years. Want to remind you that we have lots of ways to be involved with the Guild besides these monthly meetings. We have a number of special interest groups. And if you want to see what they are, you can go on our website, go to the members page, member center, and you can click on the groups icon there and you can see which special interest groups we have running right now. Now, it's unfortunate that it's unfortunate and it's good news that these SIGs have been so popular, they're all filled up right now with enrollments. So there's no opportunity to get into a new SIG, but keep your eyes open on your emails because as these SIGs finish up and close up, we open new ones and we invite members to get into them. A really good benefit of the Guild is something we call the tuition grant program. Every year for the last several years, and we had this program in the past, but had to drop it for a while. But it's been going now for, I think we're on our 4th season. We give 2 $1,000 scholarship grants to our members who want to improve their woodworking by taking training either in an organized class or doing it under the mentorship of a qualified master woodworker. Registrations for this close on March 2nd. You only got 2 more weeks. The response this year has been low. You have a very good chance of being selected right at this point if you send in your application. And if you go to services, you'll find the tuition grant program right there on our website. And we have an online application form that you can fill out. It's simple and easy and painless. Let's see. This is, of course, February. In March, our program committee has a meeting set up with George Mahoney from the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And it's going to be one of our live meetings at MCAD. It's on the 14th of March, which is a Thursday. It's, we usually have our meetings on Tuesday. Sometimes they're on Wednesday, sometimes they're on Thursday. It depends on when we can get a facility to have a meeting. And this one's going to be on Thursday, the 14th of March at MCAD. And you can find details on it if you go to our calendar on our website and pick up the March meeting, and you can get a good description of it there. Let's see, are there any other announcements that need to be made? I would guess not. If there are, you can still write us a note and we'll try to catch up on it here before we close out tonight's session. I think with that, I'm going to turn the program over to our, we'll call him the semi-master of ceremonies, Mr. Roger Knutson, who will introduce our program for tonight. Raj, it's all yours.
Welcome everybody from me, Roger Knutson. I've known Mike Siemsen for a whole bunch of years, and I still like him. It's kind of amazing, but I think you're going to enjoy Mike's presentation. He's a guy that kind of takes a no-nonsense approach to this woodworking. To a lot of us who have to have something plugged in for everything we do, Mike can have some alternatives for the good old things called hand tools. Now, mind you, he's not a hand tool purist. I'm in his shop and he's got a few things that are plugged in, but he also takes a common sense to woodworking and getting the job done with not necessarily being plugged in, but using some hand tools, some good old fashioned saws, chisels, planes, and drills and whatnot. So I guess I turn it over at this point to our guest tonight, Mike Siemsen.
Thank you, Roger. This isn't working. Try it again. There we go. Thank you, Roger. I wish I could say I still liked you. Well, we're all in this together. We're all here because we like to make big pieces of wood smaller. The methods that we choose to do that vary pretty greatly from shop to shop, person to person. But most of us, it's a hobby. And I think if you're not having fun at your hobby, you should get a different hobby. But the wood can be a little bit recalcitrant at times, and sometimes one tool will get you a better result than another. Sometimes you don't have a tool that's available. I'm going to make Matt carry the screen around a little bit. We're going to go in the back here, and we'll start back there, and then we'll wander around. If you have any questions, if you could write them down on a paper, and then we'll just skip over them at the end. So can you bring it? You want to you could probably just shoot right through this whole kind of, but you can't really, you might not see. There, you got it. Watch the steps here, Matt. So when you start out, you're going to have to get wood. Where do you get your wood? You get your wood at a lumber yard. You get your wood at a sawmill. Do you drive around the neighborhood and find free wood laying on the curb? Do you use pallets? That right there is a variation of how you're going to break your wood up, what you're going to make out of it. These are all variables that you control or decide to do that cause your woodworking to be as fun as you can make it. I got on this cart here, I have different ways to prep wood. I've got a chainsaw, I've got a buck saw and an axe, which are all used to cut long pieces of wood down to smaller sizes if you had logs. I have a chunk of wood here that I thought I would show as a sample for using if you wanted to make, like when I turn, sometimes I will split wood with a froe. This being a froe, and the wood becomes two pieces, and then you can split those again. With the froe, you always split pieces in half, and I've kind of missed the pith slightly, but this has a pith right there. So if this was how you were getting your wood, this is free wood, but it requires the most work to prepare. You're going to have to plane it. You're going to have to do a lot to it to get it ready. Now, if you're going to just put it into a lathe, that's not so bad. Otherwise, you might want to join it. And how would you do that? Would you use a hand plane? Would you use a joiner? That's up to you. So I know most of you in your shops, if you had this board here, this is about 15 inches wide. So if this was a rough board and you wanted to prep it, you would probably run it across your 16-inch joiner. and flatten it. And then you'd run it through your 24-inch planer and flatten the other side. And then you'd have a nice clean piece of lumber. But if you've only got a 6-inch joiner, now you've got a problem. Maybe you have a lunchbox planer, but you don't have a big joiner. You could take a hand plane and you could flatten one side of this flat enough to joint it, which was called trying, in order to run it through the planer, flatten that side, then you could flip it and have that prepared. And I could do that with a plane, but you probably don't want to watch that. Now we can go back up there. This was just the back room. This is my kind of my big machines on the concrete room. Sometimes when I'm jointing, like I said, I can joint with the big joiner. I can joint with a 6-inch joiner. But if I have a pile of boards come in, and I'm going to work right here, Matt. If I have a pile of boards come in and I want to joint one edge, so I've got a piece of wood that looks like that on one edge and like that on the other edge, that needs joining. That's not a very straight piece of wood. And if you didn't have a joiner, but you had a long straight 2x4, or this is a piece of a window frame, you can joint boards on your table saw pretty effectively. And I use this fairly regularly if I get a lot of lumber in and I want to get the edges straight before I make something. I can take this piece here and you can see that that has a pretty good rock in it. So I'd set this up to the narrowest width that that would cut. And I'm on my dust collector here. And I'm putting this is curved this way. So there's a point there and a point there. They sit straight against here, so that gives me a straight line. And now I have a straight board. Without using a joiner, I took off 3/4 of an inch, 5/8. With pretty easy setup, I can flip this then and cut the other side straight. And I've got a fairly jointed board. I glue these up right off the saw. They glue up pretty well. It depends on what you're making, but that's a very simple way if you don't have a joiner to make, especially really long boards straight, because a short joiner like that isn't going to really help you much. I set up a little pile of tools over here to talk about making holes. We make a lot of holes in woodworking, and there's a lot of ways to do it. We've got, you know, your corded electric drill like that. We've got your drill press, which I'm sure you all know how to work. I got it here with a Forstner bit in it. You know how you pull the lever down and it makes a hole. But this is a little portable drill press. I've made this block of wood here and drilled through it with a hole the size of the shaft of this spade bit. And you can put that, like if I want to drill, I drill a lot of these workbench holes in a class. You can put that on the wood, and then you can just drill straight down, and it keeps you drilling a straight hole without spending much money here. You've already got the bit. All you got to do is make this block of wood. It'll keep you square. Just make sure this hole drilled through here is perfectly square and straight, and every hole you drill will be square and straight. It only drills in about this far, but then you just turn it over and drill from the other side, and then you can go through 1.5 inches and get a pretty decent square hole with it. I've got some other methods of drilling holes. This here, how's your zoom on that? Can you see this? This is called a bradawl, and this is just a piece of hard steel. It's kind of flattened on the end, and it's sharpened to kind of a little chisel point. And that works pretty well for drilling holes, small holes. You put the bradawl in across the grain. You can put it vertical or horizontal. Put the flat piece across the grain. You push in and you turn 90 degrees, turn it back and push in again. And this will drill a hole. I went through that 1-inch board that easily with that. I've got a hole that big through there with with that. That's a bradawl. This is a breast drill. They have 2 speeds. If you loosen the handle, most of these have 2 speeds. You can loosen the handle and slide it up, then it's running on there. It's a low gear. You can shift it up here, and that's the high gear. They take tanged bits like auger bits. They don't take a straight shank bit. They take a tanged bit. And I can just bring that up here. And I can poke holes with those. So they work very effective. And you can put a pretty good sized drill in there if you put that down on the lower end. This here is a push drill. And these are just straight flute drills. You're used to spiral flute drills. This is just got the same thing, only it's a straight flute. These work just by pushing on them. And there's a hole through there that quick. This is a wooden brace, and I've got a center bit in there. You can see that's that type of bit. And all these are just making holes again, and you don't have to go out and run and get a center bit. But it's kind of interesting to see how they work and realize, you know, that some bit that's, you know, 150 years old still works. This is your basic egg beater drill. And I was showing this one to Roger because it's kind of interesting. You can crank it like the normal. And if you move this little switch, now it has a ratchet in it and it goes one way. If you move it again, it ratchets the other way. And if you move it again, it turns the same direction no matter which way you crank it. I think that's neat. But anyways, I have my bit in here. This is a cut off 4-penny nail. And it's really handy if I want to hold the size of a 4-penny nail. They're also nice because you won't break them. You break drill bits this size all the time. If you're drilling small holes, use small nails because they don't cost anything, and they'll drill just as fast as probably faster than that. That didn't take long, did it? I mean, you just knock that hole right in there. And especially if you're working with kids, they'll break drill bits like crazy, but you can drill that in there and say, oh crap, they bent my drill bit. You could probably bend it back and use it, or you just go cut another one off. But you can see that didn't cost much to damage that. This is a spoon bit. This is a brace that I made for fun one day, but those crank through pretty fast. And they cut like a rosette kind of out of the middle. And it's just another way to drill a hole. And they drill a round bottom hole. And those are all boring setups. This is also, I'm not going to drill a hole with this right now, but you get the general idea. You can crank on that and drill a big hole wherever you need it. But some holes are punched. That was a saying that he doesn't know if his hole is bored or punched. I remember that as being a. But so this is a leather punch, and this is leather, and I can take and punch a hole in there, nice neat hole. Try drilling a hole with a drill bit in leather, and you'll realize this is pretty handy because it doesn't work to drill them. This is also like a leather punch or a gasket punch. You could use it on gaskets too, but that will punch a nice hole. You can see it just punches a nice hole like that. But if I wanted to make a hole in this piece of steel, this is 1095 spring steel. You can't drill through this with a regular drill bit, but I can take this little hole punch and I can put that in there and squeeze it. And now I got a nice hole. So sometimes you need punches. So the more options you have, and the more, even if you just know about it, maybe you just go borrow one from somebody. That's, you know, what we want to look at. We're looking, you know, when we think about these things, it's not what method is the most superior method. It's the one you have available to you, the options that you may need in any given situation. Maybe you're at somebody else's house and you don't have all your tools, and all they got is a can opener and a rock, and that's what you're going to work with. So you got to go with that kind of thing. I mean, I think about if you're going to the post office. If you're going to the post office, do you walk, do you ride your bike, or do you drive your car? Well, it depends on how far the post office is and how big the package is you're carrying to a certain degree. So like I said, a hand tool method or a power tool method isn't necessarily one better than the other. A lot of times I will do things with hand tools because they're faster for me than going to a power tool for jigging up and stuff. I can draw a line on a board and saw it faster than I can go over and use a table saw or something. A lot of times I can get to where I want to be with less work. Another reason I choose a tool is because it's easier to sharpen. I might use a hatchet or an axe instead of a saw because it only has one tooth. So you have that option. Then there's questions as to how many pieces are you making? If I'm making one thing, I can probably make it just about as fast with hand tools. If I'm making 10 things, it starts being very much worthwhile to jig up. To jig up your tools in that. I mean, if you've got a small garden in your backyard, you can fill it up with a spade easier than you're trying to get a tractor back there. So you decide what's the most sensible method of doing something. Availability, if you have something available to you to use, whether you borrow it from your friend or you know another shop or there's a place where you could rent, those are all of the methods of availability, and then you can factor in the cost. Or maybe it's just you got a hand plane and you can plane the board off right now and you don't have to deal with anything later. Or you have a 12-inch planer and you can shove it through there. You also need to have all of these tools sharp. I don't care what kind of woodworking you do. If your tools aren't sharp, you're doing crappy woodworking. If you think about what it would cost to acquire a tool if you're taking on a job, and you need 10 feet of molding, maybe it's easier to use a scratch stock to make 10 feet of molding than it is to buy a molding machine and spend 10 grand. So, you think about those kind of things. Other options are if you're working in a plywood or an MDF, you probably don't want to use a lot of hand tools because it's abrasive and they don't really like it. Then you're better off using hand routers and table saws and that. Another thing that's important is do you have the ability to run that tool or that machine? Do you know how to operate it? Are you safer about doing another process over that one? Are you just physically not strong enough to push, a number 8 plane to flatten a board? Maybe not. Maybe you should so you get stronger. I don't know. Those are things you have to decide. And is noise and dust a factor? I've worked in houses where it's easier for me to use a hand miter box than to bring in a powered miter box because it throws stuff all over in the air and makes dust, and they both work just fine. And so I'll bring in a hand miter box and set it down on a tarp, and I don't have any mess when I'm done. There's no dust in the air. So there's a lot of factors that you have to weigh in as you're doing these things to decide why I want to use a certain specific tool on a job, and to try it. And the more knowledge you have about the different tools you have to use, the better you'll make as a choice to what you want to do in your project. And typically it enables you to do more. The more options you have available to you, the more things you can do with those options. I set up over here, Matt. This is this is how you drive screws. This is another thing. You can have a power tool like this cordless drill, and you can stick that in there, and you can do that. You can have this Yankee screwdriver, and you can put that in there like that. Oops, make it go in like that. You can have a regular screwdriver like that, and you could also put the original cordless screwdriver like that. If you're driving these 3-inch screws all day, this one will still be running at the end of the day, and this one won't. So those are options just screw driving, or you could pound it in with a hammer. I've seen that done too. If you're needing to resaw something, how do you go about that? You can go to your table saw and you can cut a kerf all around the board. Raise your hand if you've done that. Then you take a hand saw and saw the middle out. That works. You can go to your bandsaw. As long as your bandsaw has a deep enough throat, you can get through there. You can saw the whole thing with a regular hand saw, which is a lot of work. Or if you're real nuts, you probably have one of these in your shed. And this is a frame saw. can go to the gym less and make more wood shavings in your house. That frame saw, and this frame saw, and this frame saw are all related. That one's made for sawing straight. These will cut curves. If I wanted to cut a curve, I could cut on the bandsaw. I could cut with this frame saw here or with this one. If I want to cut an outside curve in a board like this, if I wanted to put a nice curve in there like that, I could do that several different ways. I could take it to my bandsaw and do that. Or you could just grab your draw knife and you could make it with your draw knife. It all depends on the quality that you want of it. I could come back with a spoke shave and clean that up, but it's a quick way to get something done. Maybe I want to take some more off of here like that. And I'm feeling lazy or exciting or whatever. I could go and I could get my hatchet out. I used my hatchet. The guild had a pinewood derby. And I brought a hatchet and a stump and I carved my pinewood derby car in the back outside with a hatchet and a stump. But you can work pretty fast with a hatchet. Main thing is not to cut yourself, you know. And you can get real close to your line. That isn't really a straight line, but you can also just take the hatchet and just push on it. And it acts kind of like a plane. And again, these are tools, they have one edge. The draw knife and the hatchet both have one edge. So I only have one edge to sharpen. If I take a saw and do that, I got 60 edges to sharpen. So you can choose your battles. And over here, I set up to talk about mortise and tenon. So can you get over there maybe, Matt? And you'll kind of see what's going on then. We'll get going. There's a lot of ways to cut a mortise and a tenon. You can use a domino. I don't have a domino. I don't think I will ever have a domino, but that's my choice. I didn't want to spend that much money on something. So if I wanted to chop a mortise, say in this piece of wood here, I would get my mortise chisel right there. And I would get my mortising gauge, which has 2 pins in it, which are the same as my chisel. And I would gauge a line where I'm going to mortise. And then I would know how big my mortise was going to be. I'm just going to pretend I know. And I can clamp that here. And I can just chop my mortise. When you chop a mortise, you start just ahead of the line and then you just work your way back. And these pieces here are loose. See, that's gone. And every time I hit this, it goes deeper. It goes deeper and it slides backwards. If you watch what the chisel does, the first time I hit it, I'll go over here. The first time I hit it, it goes in about that far. If I hit it again, it really doesn't go in any further. It stops. So then I move it forward and it'll go deeper. And then if I move it forward again, it goes even deeper. You can see that every time I hit this, it goes deeper. And it also, when it's going forward, pairs the side of the tenon off, or the mortise. So you can see as I hit this, the face of the chisel moves forward and pairs off the face of the tenon. So I can chop as I go, and you keep this pretty vertical. And it doesn't take that long to make a reasonable mortise. and a piece of wood. I'm not gonna make an entire mortise, but get the general idea. Now, I could also just run over here and turn on the mortiser, which that's 3-phase. I'd have to go turn on a 3-phase converter, but in here you can see the chisel is just here's a nice sample here. It's a hollow chisel. It's a square hollow chisel with this drill bit inside of it. So the drill bit removes the wood and the chisel pulls the corners in and cleans them out so you can drill a square hole using this machine. I'm going to be right back. I'm going to go turn on the phase converter. It's in the back. It's a rotary thing. It'll make a little noise, but not too bad. I'm on a phase converter, which is rotary. You can hook up to what's called a VFD nowadays, and they work pretty well for converting 3-phase equipment. But here you can see it just runs, and then I can step on that. It makes a nice hole, and you just move it over. It has stops on it. You can actually set it up to cut just to a specific size, but that's how a hollow chisel mortiser works. Other than domino and maybe a slot router, those are kind of your options for making a mortise. Making tenons, you have a few more options, I think, because you can bandsaw tenons, you can table saw tenons, and you can handsaw tenons. You can also, and I set up this here for your amusement, is this is set up to be a tenon, and I'm aiming that at the camera, so it's a little awkward, but this is really straight grain. If you had wood that was split out like I did in the back with the fro, you can take and put your and there's my tenon. And that's a pretty fast way to cut tenons. If it's a little off, I can put my wide chisel in the scribe line and I can pare through and clean that right off. But that split off there pretty cleanly to make a tenon. So if your wood is straight grain, you can do this pretty easily. It makes it almost look easy. I think Roger could even do it. But if you really want to make tenons, you get yourself one of these. This is probably the scariest thing you've ever seen. You can see these cutters here, they spin around at a high rate of speed and grind flesh if you put it in there, which you just don't do. It's actually scarier than it really is, because you have to have one hand here and one hand here. So unless you've got 3 arms, you're not going to get in there. But this thing, so when I'm in a hurry, I use this and this. But if I'm just having fun, then I would use the other stuff. And like I said, bandsaw works with a fence. You can set up the bandsaw really quickly. I usually cut one side and then move the fence and cut the other side so that they stay equal. I've put 2 blades in a table saw and used a guide on the top. They make a mortising or a tenoning jig that you can slide on the table saw, or you can just saw them out with your back saw, which is what I have right here. So I would use my bench hook and I would saw by shoulder. And then I would put it, I would saw both shoulders, but I'm only going to do one. And then I would just saw. And I could probably use a little bit bigger saw here, but this is a kind of a little bit fine on the teeth for this, but you get the general idea. You just saw them to the line. And again, if you make a mistake doing things like this, always make your mistake into the waist. You can always pare off the tenon, but if you go the other way, it's too small. If you were to set up your bandsaw to do this, that's pretty easy. You just bring your fence over, put it on the line. And you got a one side cut. And then I would always move the fence to cut the other side. I would never flip it. You could flip it if your wood's exactly right, but you'd probably end up wishing you hadn't unless you got that mortise dead on. But you could do it either way. So those are all methods of making tenons. And I've done 2 hours of work now in 15 minutes. This here is a screw and a piece of wood, and that's a marking gauge that costs you literally nothing. It's adjustable with a screwdriver, and it works really well. So if you need marking gauges, these are sharp. I took the screw and ground the head of it so it's sharp on the edge, and it works really well to lay out a knife line. So you don't have to spend money on gauges. Now I've saved you money. I think that was everything I had on that bench. So now I don't have nothing now. That's all I know about woodworking. We can take questions, I suppose, if you want to do that and talk about, if people want to know ideas of what they're trying to do, or they want to find out about my misspent youth or whatever. I'm going to go shut that thing off. I'd be happy to demonstrate any kind of planing thing, or, oh, I also had over here, now that I think of it, was one last thing. I had a molding plane that cuts that molding, and I had a router bit that cuts that molding, see? Now you'd have to run that router bit at an angle almost to do it, but so you can, basically all these molding planes were replaced by router bits in the power tool system. That's what you've got. These are basically your molding planes. Is there a way for them to ask questions, or like if they want me to demonstrate something specific, I just get an overview here of some options, and there's a lot more.
Mike,
Like
you've
the
shown us a
golden
lot
focus.
of really interesting old tools.
Yeah.
Tell us how you have acquired them.
That's from China. A friend of mine brought me that. Yes.
How you've acquired some of your older tools.
Old people die and I go to their sales is one way. Midwest Tool Collectors has 3 tool meets a year in Minnesota. I always like to advertise for them. They're another good organization. The tool meets is where a lot of the people are selling off tools. You want one specific tool and you have to buy a whole box of other stuff to get it, so that the old lady doesn't know you're cheating her. So you go there and you do that, and then you have stuff to sell. So that's one way to do it, is to go there. Craigslist, eBay. There's wherever you find them. There are garage sales. Years and years of searching.
We have a question about what's your favorite way to make a cross-grain glue?
Well, it would depend. If I only need to make one, I use my dado plane, and it's not a groove, it's a dado. Let's get our terminology right, people. When it's cross grain, it's a dado. When it's with the grain, it's a groove. But it doesn't really matter. I'm just a stickler for these things. This is a dado plane. It has a setting for a depth. It has 2 knickers that cut the wood, and it has a cutter here. Now, if I just need to make a few, or I want to enjoy myself in the quiet and drink beer while I'm working, this is what I have. I use this. If I'm just grinding them out because I want to get done, I'll stick a dado head in the table saw and cut them that way. But this one here, I can probably set this up pretty quick. So if I wanted to plow a dado a groove across here, I would nail that stick on there, and I would clamp this board down, and then I would see if I can make it work without too much struggle. But I'd pull this backwards, and the knickers have cut 2 little lines there, and now I just push it forwards. And I would do this until it hits this depth stop all the way across, and it'll stop cutting, and I will have a dado. And if I wanted to go the other way and plow a groove, then I would use a plow plane. Or if I wanted a rabbet, I would use a moving Philister plane to make that cut.
Do you know how to sharpen and set up a Japanese kana plane?
No, if
What
you
do
showed
use?
me one, I bet I could figure it out, because all these tools do the same thing. All woodworking tools are made to do what? Cut wood and be held by a human being. So if you can figure out those two things and the conjunction of them, the quality of the edge on something like that is probably, they probably are assuming that it's a finer polish in that. So you have to have a certain degree of skill in sharpening. But and I don't even know what kind of plane it is. It's probably one of them foot wide ones they use in those contests. But I would be willing to take a crack at it.
What do you use to sharpen your tools?
It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm on the lathe, I use a grinder and I go right off the wheel. If I'm sharpening chisels, it varies with how I feel that day or what's handy, but I've got every kind of stone under the sun. Usually I'm using a hard Arkansas or some kind of a diamond stone.
Have you used a Stanley number 66 beater?
A 66 what? Beater?
Beater.
A beater. A beater. Is it like a wife beater? I think I have a knockoff one somewhere. Here it is. I think this is what they're referring to. This beating tool like this. Yes, I have used that. Is there more to follow up on that?
No.
Okay. And you can, one thing about them is nice is you can take scraps of steel, like I poked that hole in over there, and you can make your own cutters. So you can make profiles that you may need for a specific job. That you know, you don't need 20 feet of a molding, you only need 2 feet maybe, or maybe like here, this was for putting in an inlay. So there's all kinds of different things that you might use it for.
What do you use on your hand tools to prevent rust? Do you use anything special or
I-
just 3-in-1 oil?
I find if you use them every day, they don't have rust on them. I'm not joking. I don't really put anything on my tools to get carried away with rust prevention. If anything, I've got these, I'll just do an ad for my favorite oil can too while I'm at it. This is the best oil can ever made. This is the best oil can you can find. But this has just synthetic motor oil in it, probably like a 1030 weight or something. And I'll squirt that on a rag and rub it on the tools. And I also use it to oil everything that squeaks. So I got one oil in the shop. I don't buy jojoba oil or whatever they got. They got all kinds of, there's no mystery to this stuff. It's just rust gets on stuff. Though if you want to avoid rust on your tools, there are things that cause tools to rust. One of them is heating and cooling, like a garage shop where you go in and you heat the shop up to 60 degrees so you can work. And then it cools down to whatever. Then you heat it up again. And then the water condenses on the tools, comes out of the air, and your tools rust. If you have like a wooden toolbox like this, that tends to help some with the rust because some of the moisture is absorbed by the wood inside the box. The box is not finished inside. So the tools in the box tend to not rust or not to rust very badly. There are things called golden rods that you put inside pianos. If you have a consistent problem in a toolbox, something like that might help. They remove humidity or maintain humidity in a situation. Desiccant packs, if you get them, they come in everything. You can dry them out in the oven and use them over and over again. They can help you keep oxidation off your tools. Don't store your tools by chlorine bleach. That's a real bad one. There are things that, just common sense things like that are going to cause your tools to rust. But the main thing is if you use your tools every day, they don't rust. Just like your skills.
What can you tell us about the benches, your benches that you
I've got 2 or 3 different kinds of benches. I like this bench that I was working on there, the Nicholson bench is what we call it, the Nicholson joiner's bench. I like that bench because it's inexpensive to make and you can make it with hand tools fairly easily. You need a long plane, an auger, and a table, a crosscut saw, maybe a screwdriver and a hammer, and that's about it. You don't need a lot of tools to build that. And it's a fairly square, straight, flat bench for, you know, $150. This other bench, like this one here, the problem with them is making the tops, because you're going to have to somehow mill out a top that's 2¼ inches thick by 2 feet wide. Now, because I have big enough equipment in the back, I can make those pretty easily. I can run the wood through the planer, rip it to width, glue it up, joint it in 2 sections, glue those 2 sections together and plane them, and I've got a flat top. But if you're making a bench with a thick top and you want to make it from a single slab, or if you're gluing it up, that's a difficult hand tool proposition. Where here, this is pretty easy to do with a power tool. You could do it with a lunchbox planer, I suppose, at home. They're both the same. They do exactly the same job.
Someone wants to know, what was your most challenging restoration project? I'm guessing hand tool they're talking about.
Probably my house, now that I think about it. It's pretty bad. My house was started in about 1860 and we're nearly done. It is, and I'm the first carpenter I've ever been on this land. I can guarantee you that. There were poles in the ceiling and it was a mess. So that was an interesting task. I used to restore 18th century American furniture. So challenging stuff. Some of the most challenging things to do is grain matching and tabletops and things like that, where there's a major damage and you're trying to get rid of it, is to make it vanish. There's a lot to that. And also putting new parts on old furniture and making them look like they've been there for 200 years can be a pretty interesting task. But none of it is overly, it's more interesting than challenging, I guess. It's just fun. But all those things are things that you run up against that takes more than just an average skill level to get you through. You got to be real creative.
We got a question about your school. If you can tell us a little bit about your school.
My school, Mike School of Woodworking. I'm right here in Chisago. You've seen the shop here. I usually have, I aim for 6 students in a class. If I'm lucky, I get it full. I mean, I can go a little more. I've got toolboxes here for each student. I think I've got 7, 8 toolboxes. Typically classes have about 4 or 5 people in them. They range for 2 days and cover quite a bit of topics. Most of the topics tend to be, they're all hand tool oriented for the most part, and tend to be more beginner, intermediate level stuff. I've had other people come in and teach a couple times, but most of the time I just teach in the classes, and a lot of sharpening classes, tool repairs. Then we make some furniture pieces and things like that. Skill oriented.
Anything else you want to add before we go?
If you'd like to take a class, email me and we'll sort it out. I do have a website at schoolofwood.com. If you have suggestions for a class or something that you might want to see me offer, send me an email. I can think about it. Otherwise, you know, I'm around too. If people have questions about things, I'm more than willing to talk.
We did have one last question is, what is your favorite woods to work with?
The ones that grow around here. I like white pine for a secondary wood, and I like walnut, cherry, maple, and birch. And if you go to a foreign land, you will find that those are highly sought after, expensive hardwoods that are to them not local. Just like you want to buy all your wood from Africa, they want to buy all their wood from America. So.
Can you talk a little bit more about his schools and the classes he offers?
Somebody asked if you could just maybe list some of the classes that you are offering right now.
right now, this Saturday, I got a saw sharpening class coming up. Then after that, there's a sea chest class where we build, I can dig one out here. We build a box with trapezoidal sides. So it's kind of a small sea chest, but that's what that looks like. And so you learn to cut angled dovetails. And we do a one-day class where we just make a little bench that you can sit on, which is a good beginner class. I do a class on sharpening planes, and then on one day we sharpen planes and chisels. The next day we use all the different kinds of planes I have, how they work, what they do, and why you might use one over another. I have a class where I just gapped that out. So we did saw sharpening, the chisels and tool sharpening. We got this chest, bench. We do a workbench class because we just finished that class. We did the workbench. I'm pulling blanks right now. I don't know why. That's a one way. I just did a wood turning class too. We did spindle turnings on one day and bowl turnings on the next day, and it was just kind of an introduction to wood turning, just to people to get their feet wet, get a feel for what they might want to get and what they might want to do.
Can you repeat his website again?
Somebody asked you to repeat the website.
Schoolofwood.com. Bunch of O's in there.
Oh, somebody wants to see the inside of the tool chest.
Which one?
I guess that one there probably.
This is what I call a sea chest. It's just an empty box. This one here, and I have several of these, and some of them are painted with milk paint. This one's painted with shellac. So this one has two trays in it with tools in them. And then this here is what's called a Dutch tool chest, which people have asked me to offer that as a class, and I may sometime, but this has got tools in it too. And this has storage in the bottom.
How about which bench design is his favorite to use?
Which bench design is your favorite to use?
They're all do the same thing. If you think about how a bench works, you have a plane here that holds up the wood, and these holes in here, you can put pegs in here and hold your boards up to different heights. And everything here is 90 degrees, and you can stick things in this vise and hold them there. And this bench here does basically the same thing. The variations are, this one takes apart a little flatter. You can almost flat pack them to move them around. These here, if you pull the legs off of them, they really are only this deep, so they're not too bad to move. I like this bench because I like to see people get started in woodworking. And this is a bench you can build for 150 bucks with hand tools. So you could easily build this bench and have a place to work. This one's a little more work to build, and you need some power tools, but I find them equally usable. They do the same thing.
Somebody asked, what is your favorite piece to make?
The American greenback dollar. I do like making furniture pieces. I've built several different styles of furniture in that. We built a Stickley settee. We built this, and I also built the Morris chair. We built sideboards. We built clocks in a class. We built a clock case. For me, a big part of the building a piece of furniture, especially like a reproduction, the closer I can get to the original, the happier I am. Where I used to work, we would build reproductions, and if they cracked in the same place as the original, then you got a slap on the back because you did it right. Because you can avoid that cracking, but you weren't making a reproduction, then you were just making a similar piece. So those kind of things, you know, it's an odd thing to care about, but yeah, if your piece breaks like the old one, you did it right, you know. But the old stuff didn't break as much in the old days because they didn't have central heating, so the furniture was all pretty static as far as the humidity. They didn't have trouble with it breaking. That's a modern thing. But you know, some of them can be pretty intricate. I think building things for me is probably the new project is always the best one because you're challenged to use your mind and be designing, figuring joinery out, you know, and then once you get it all figured out, then you got to build the damn thing. Huh, Roger? Yeah, it's right, isn't it? You conceive it, you got you know how you're going to make the whole thing. It's all done in your head. Now you got to actually do it. And that's just buying a bunch of wood, making stuff. But that's fun too.
Do you have a favorite method for finishing wood?
I'm a real proponent of shellac. I think it's a really nice finish to work with. I've used, you know, like Waco oil and that in the past. It depends on the project, what it is, what you're doing, you know, what the people, if it's for you or for somebody else, that makes a difference. You can look at these tool chests. They're all painted with milk paint. I think milk paint is kind of nice. You put milk paint with linseed oil, it gives you a nice finish and color. But that's and then when I was building kitchens, I used quite a bit of lacquer.
Somebody asked, where do you get the inspiration for the reproductions from?
Oh, books and magazines, museums, you know, that kind of thing. There's, you know, the best show I ever saw with antique furniture was in Madison, Wisconsin, at the museum there. I just stumbled in there and they had the best damn furniture in there. It was nice stuff. I mean, it was every bit of it was top of the line. But yeah, you never know where you're going to see things and what you like, and you know, maybe you want, one day you decide to make something that's mid-century and take a picture of it, and then you go home and build it because you know how to make joints. You can make it look.
Are there other woodworkers he's learned from or admires?
Can you repeat that question, please?
Are there other woodworkers that he has learned from or admires?
Are there other woodworkers that you have learned from or admire?
A lot of them, a lot of woodworkers. I've worked with some really skilled craftsmen that unfortunately a lot of them are dead, and they were friends in that, and you'd be shocked at how wild they lived. But anyways, but they knew their trade. They really did. They were skilled craftsmen, but they're kind of unknowns to a degree. And then there's people that you know, that are well known that you see on television and that, you know, I've always liked to watch Roy Underhill, not so much for his woodworking as his BS, because he's entertaining as hell. And he always manages to impart some kind of knowledge or wisdom to you through it. So I've always appreciated that. And there's once in a while you run across somebody on the internet that actually knows what they're talking about. And friends, I mean, it's funny, information is all over, and you have to kind of take it where you find it. And there's a lot of really great woodworkers out there, and most of them are just regular guys. And if you want to meet them, go find them and talk to them, and they'll talk to you. But there's some pretty good craftsmen out there. Finding people near you that know what they're actually talking about is the key to it, I think.
Somebody asked what was the name of the tool swap group, and I think that was the Midwest Tool Collectors
Midwest Tool
Association.
Collectors Association, NWTCA.
And then somebody asked, how do you cut a stop dado by hand?
There's no stop dados. You don't cut stop dados by hand. It's not done. If you look at old furniture, you will not find a stop dado. However, if you really want to, you can. If you look at it with stair treads in that were stop dados, and they would do those. And they would do that with, I don't even know where the hell that saw is now. I have a stair saw someplace, but they, let's see, up there, just saw it. But a stair saw, they would basically auger a hole, and then you started at the hole and sawed out with the stair saw, and then you chiseled out the waste. And so you can do that by hand, but a stop dado is truly not. I mean, everything, there's always an exception to every so-called rule, but it's typically not done. Dados were done all the way through, and then you would glue a cap over it or something to make it a stop dado. There were ways that it was done, but you didn't.
Somebody asked, do you do wood carving, any wood carving?
No, I don't. I have carved a small degree out of necessity, but I've not, and I have way more carving tools than most carvers, but that's another story. But no, I have never really taken up carving. But I recommend, if you want to carve, if 5 guys want to do it, I'll get Mary May in here in a heartbeat. She's a nice lady. She's a friend of mine.
Somebody asked, how are you using vertical bench dogs on your jointer bench? Guess maybe it's a Nicholson
I
bench
don't
you're
have any
talking about?
vertical bench dogs. I don't. My friend John, he gives me a hard time because I don't clamp stuff between dogs on the bench top. I don't do that. There's no end vise, and there's no bench dogs to clamp up against. There's other methods of holding that I use that give you the same result, but I'm not clamping between dogs.
Maybe they're talking about the Nicholson bench there. on the
Well, any of
sides?
them, none of these benches, that one over there has, I think this is what they're asking me is, do I have dogs like these here that pop up and I can clamp in between a vise? Is that, ask them, is that what we're talking about? Yeah, I'm thinking he's talking about basically this here. If I understand his question correctly, he wants to know, how do I do this? Which I haven't done in a long time, so give me a minute. He wants me to clamp. I'm thinking he's asking me about these dogs coming up out of the bench to clamp between them like that to hold wood. This bench and this bench have that, but I never use them.
In the
If I
area,
wanted to hold pieces, I can show you some quick methods of work holding where if I want to clamp something to the bench for planing or whatever I need to do, I use what's called a hold. I use hold fasts, and then I have this thing here. It's called a doze foot. And this bench, I have a planing stop here that I just pop up that I can put stuff against. And I can take this and put it there like that. And I can grab one of these and put it there like that. Now I could work on that. So like if I wanted to, I was talking earlier about rabbiting, I could cut a rabbit in here. And this is called, everybody calls this a rabbit plane, but it's actually a moving Philister plane is the correct name of it. But I can plane that here. Caught. See, and that board's just laying there, and I can pick it up again and move it. I can do one on the other side, put it back, and so I don't use dogs to clamp stuff onto the bench or clamp between dogs. I just hold things like that. So it's just a stick with an angle on it. I could do that over there. I'd have to move some things. I will do that. This bench here doesn't have a stop, the same kind of stop.
So, somebody, SJ was asking about the holes in the side of the bench, what they're used for.
They're just to hold up the wood. If I wanted to plane the edge of a board, I'll do that. I'll just do one quick. If I wanted to plane the edge of this board off, I could stick a dowel in here or here. I won't use the vise very much if I can reach. Yeah, that might reach. So I could grab that there, and then I could plane the top of that board off by holding it up there just like that. If you want to see more of this work holding stuff on this kind of benches, I have a video on YouTube and under my name, as far as I know, that's how you'd find it, about work holding on a viceless bench. So that's what it's called. And you can see a bench like this, and I do various processes on there where I just am showing how to make different joints and cut boards and things on this bench. I think I have one of these hanging here, yeah. See, this has this toothy thing here, see? I can shove that against there, and I can put this board here. Now I could work on that. I could plane the top of it, or I could do whatever I needed to do. If I wanted to, on the narrow board like that, if I just wanted to plane the edge of it, I could actually just do that. Well, I just planed the edge and the face of this board without changing a lot of stuff. This bench has a stick up the middle here that I can pop up. If I wanted to plane up against it, I could shove something against it there too if I needed to go across. If I wanted to make the end of this board here square, I could use this bench hook again. And I could put this board against here. And I could plane the end of it square like this. For some reason, I wanted that square, or let's say I cut it off and it was like 1/bazillionth too long. That's really hard to saw off on anything, but you can take it off with a plane pretty easily. So that's how you do that.
Somebody asked if you have any, I guess, any helpful hints for museum pieces you cannot touch but only take pics. How do you take the lines off the pics? Suggestions for proper photos.
I actually did a video on that for Popular Woodworking, which I'm sure is unavailable and not online. But any photo that you take of a piece of furniture in the museum, if you're trying to like copy a leg or something, the closer you can get to straight on, the better. If you can have a ruler in the same plane as whatever you're taking a picture of, that helps. And then, if you can get any kind of measurements at all, sometimes they will have information, on the piece. They'll tell you how long it is or something. But the other thing to do is I always bring a mirror with me, because I can look at the top of something that if I'm not tall enough, like you could even put a mirror on a stick, you can hold it up and you can see. The problem with most of these things is, what the furniture looks like from the magazines and the books or wherever, but you can't see any of the blocking and the secondary woods and things. So by bringing mirrors along, you can see above, you can see underneath, you know, and you know, they don't like it to get too close, but you can, if you talk to them, the best way if you really can get close to furniture is to talk to the curator and see if you can go in and look at it. Usually they don't want to, but a lot of times if you have any kind of credentials at all, they're pretty nice about it. So, and then you can get a little closer. They won't let you touch it, but you can get closer and keep an eye on you. But and then what I do is if I was copying something, if I got a picture of it that's taken like straight on or even at an angle, and I have this big piece of glass here on the ceiling, see that piece of glass there? And I lower that down and I put a paper on it, and then I set up a slide projector. And if you've got an image taken at an angle, if you project it back from the same angle, it makes it square on the screen. Just like if you put it, you know, if you take something that's square and go crooked, it goes at an angle, you can put it back to square. And if you know the dimensions, you can actually move it in and out and draw a full-size picture of it by working. Then I work on the back side. The slide shines through the glass, and I draw on the back side of it. I can see where things are and turn the lights off. You can kind of get the general information there, but that's the way I do it. But taking good, clear photos and having some kind of measurement by them is your best bet.
Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Happy to be of service.
Appreciate your presentation. And I guess that'll be it for the presentation. Anything else that you want to add, Ed?
Well, we're looking forward to seeing a lot of people at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design in March. Put that on your calendar. Come see us live in person. We like to see faces and share stories and all that kind of stuff. And until then, be safe. We'll see you then.